Yeah. So when shall I start?
Okay, go.
Hello, I'm the first speaker for the affirmative side of this debate, and we believe that Macbeth would be better without the witches, because in the current play, the witches undermine the characters and the key themes of the play and deduct from the experience for the audience as a whole. The first thing we need to address is, what is Macbeth about? Seems obvious. It's about the psychological struggles of humans and human nature and criticisms of free will as a whole and democracy. So therefore, the audience must be engaged in this struggle. There must be something left to doubt. There must be engagement with this kind of doubt. The witches don't satisfy these themes. They show up and they immediately lay out the entire framework of the play. There's nothing left. For example, Act 1, Scene 3. There is nothing that Macbeth has ever said that would ever show, oh, I'm power hungry and I want to kill everything. This should actually be built up naturally, perhaps through conversations with Banquo. Instead, the witches just show up and they say, well, you're going to become king, great. This reduces the entire first act, so that you all just get it over with. Yeah, point of information?
Well, the witches say, but if somebody tells you something like that, how do you know for sure that it's true? The fact that they're supernatural, that shows the audience that this could possibly be true.
The audience can see immediately when the witches come in that, yep, this is how the thing's going to go. They have the power because it was written to like satisfy James I's paranoia. So obviously Shakespeare is going to make it follow the witch's prophecy. But all the doubt that Macbeth experiences and all the psychological struggle, it's gone because the witches have already laid out the framework and the audience doesn't become engaged. It deducts from this struggle. Now, the atmosphere of the entire play is simply reduced to this supernatural mess of childish rhyming couplets and double-double, toil and trouble. But the thing is, it makes it feel too safe, where the audience would normally be shocked by these perversions of nature, the horses turning against one another, the eagle eating the sparrow. I've forgotten exactly what it was. But it feels safe because it's just like, oh, it's got to be the witches, hasn't it? So, just to sum up this, it nullifies the entire first act, removes any doubt as to Macbeth's psychological wants, just changes Macbeth and creates a false character almost, and then makes the atmosphere far too safe. So, my second speaker will cover how it... Oh, okay.
Okay, good. Thanks very much. A round of applause. Okay, the first speaker for the opposition.
Okay, go.
Okay.
Good morning, educator, wherever you're from, and fellow teammates. Macbeth would not be better without the witches because they give necessary exposition and effect on the audience. That is what makes Macbeth great. I mean, majorly, right? They give Macbeth a false sense of security. They give his hubris, which is the whole point of the play, that brings about his downfall. For example, the Last Stand, and Act 5, how he has no fear. That's incredibly interesting in the audience, and a play is supposed to entertain.
Your point about the witches providing great exposition. This is handled so much better by characters in Act 3, Scene 4. Human characters such as Ross and the old man. They really give texture to the play and give questions to the audience while also providing the necessary exposition. The witches don't add this nature.
Yes, maybe perhaps humans would be more relatable, but it's supposed to. So many plays, and I'm sure I would have that in that time, and now, in fact, in movies. I think the witches add something more interesting to the exposition, and different, and supernatural is incredibly interesting. They're not awe of mystery, as I said. They're just very interesting and captivating. Macbeth would have no ambition. So, for example, art no without ambition, too full of human kindness. They drive himself to make the play incredibly interesting.
The witches being interesting characters or not doesn't in any way affect the play. As the play is, as my first speaker said, it's about the internal struggles of human nature, and it's about the internal struggles of the Macbeths, as one could say. And so therefore, the witches being interesting characters or not, it doesn't really matter, because we don't really care much for the witches. We care about what Macbeth does.
Yes, but I would say they're important that the play is incredibly dark and wicked, without them. It seems almost dry that you have so much killing and so much murder, like, they're just, they're going to kill the king and they're going to kill the king and now they're going to take power, wow, great. These breaks, the breaks that the witches have, talking, this playfulness, it's not safe, it just, it creates, relaxation, but so that you can enjoy the more murderous, more ruthless part of the play even better. And also, interestingly, the protagonist, they bring the protagonist's downfall, unlike most plays where, something would just make them drive instead of bring them down afterwards. Yeah, thank you.
You've got quite that pick up more than his speech. Okay, I'm making an adjustment to the rules that you can only make 1 point of information each per person during another speech. Otherwise, it's just too much for a 3-minute speech. Okay, so the second speaker for the House.
Okay.
Good morning, honourable adjudicator, worthy opponents and fellow students. I'm the second speaker for my house. Now, I don't think that we believe that the witches don't add much to the psychological depth of certain characters. For example, Lady Macbeth has qualities about her that could be very interesting, but because of the witches, we just say, oh, well, this is the influence of the witches on her character. But without that, it would make her much more interesting. In her soliloquy, for example, when she says, I'm sex me here, we just say that this is influence of the witches, but without that, it could have a lot more depth to it. Next, for the language, the rhyming couplets throughout that are from the witches and the way they speak. For example, in Act 4, Scene 1, the hubble, bubble, boil, and trouble, it's quite childish, and it takes away from...
Point of information. When you say when Lady Macbeth says, unsex me here, you say it was due to the witches, so without the witches this could mean much more. Could you give an example of what it could mean?
Well, it could mean that she doesn't want to be a woman. But with the witches, you just think that because the women don't have anything that make them feminine or masculine, so they're just they don't have a gender role, but without that, it could be forced. Okay, as I was saying about the language, the rhyming couplets that we see break up the quality of the soliloquies, which have a lot more language that makes them interesting. But when we hear the language of the witches and their scenes, we just think it's quite humorous, and it takes away from the darkness of the play that we see throughout. My next point is about the atmosphere. The play alone, without the witches, already has a very sinister atmosphere. For example, in Act 2, Scene 4, when he speaks about the horses eating each other, this has nothing to do with the witches, and it's still dark.
If the play didn't start with the witches, then the audience wouldn't know that this is going to be a tragedy play if we didn't know about the rest of the play. But because of the witches, we can sense that, oh, the play is going to be dark and ominous.
Well, as the play progresses, we will already start to sense that. It doesn't have to be told to us explicitly in the beginning, because we'll start to know that this is what's going to happen. And we have other characters and messengers and stuff that can tell us that instead of the witches. We don't need them to deliver the message. So in the modern world, especially today, if you watch the play, we have seen witches as not something scary anymore. They've been overblown. Perhaps in that time it would have been seen as something more threatening, but in this day and age we know that witches don't actually exist, so it will make it humorous.
Okay, good, well done, round of applause. We're not going to stick strictly to the third speaker not bringing new points in, so if you haven't finished your points, you could bring new points in. Okay, good.
Go.
Alright, good morning, adjudicator, worthy opponent and fellow teammates. I'd like to start by stating our case line. This house believes that Macbeth would not be better without the witches, purely because we need the exposition that the witches give, and it's necessary to the effectiveness of the entire play. Now, I'd like to start by giving some rebuttals of my opponent's points. Now, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone with this one. So, their first speaker said there must be engagement with the audience. And their third speaker said, we don't care much for the witches as an audience. And in 1604, witchcraft became a capital offence. So King James had made it.
Point of information.
Sit down, please. Shakespeare purposefully included this supernatural to please the king. So all of the audience members, or at least most of them, would believe that they are pure servants of evil, which would have really evoked fear in the audience, really including them in the play. I believe this is an example of engaging the
Point of
audience.
information.
Yes.
You contradicted yourself in the span of like 10 seconds. First you said that the first speaker said that we must engage with the audience. Then you said the second speaker actually said that the witches aren't engaging for the audience. That proves our point. The witches don't engage the audience, therefore they're not necessary.
I didn't say the second speaker. I said the third speaker. It was Asab in a rebuttal. He says, in a point of information, he goes, we don't care much for the witches. And he's speaking from an audience point of view. So that's not contradicting myself. You just used the wrong quote there. Now, as I said, they provide the necessary exposition. For example, the prophecies. Now these prophecies act as a catalyst for Macbeth to really pursue the kingship. They're important, again, to the play, because they embody symbols of fate, temptation, evil, and the supernatural, which are obviously the key themes in the play. Now, the witches, they set the mood for the play. They open the play in the opening scene. So this means, if Shakespeare had included them in the opening scene, he must believe that they are important and necessary to the entire play. I mean, they set the mood, so ominous and dark, and many other things. So Shakespeare must believe they're the most important characters if he opened them with the play. Now, the deaths of all the characters, they wouldn't have had as much impact on the audience, as the audience can really feel that it was unfair for those people to be killed because Macbeth was driven by these prophecies. My third speaker will expand on this point. I'd like to just end by restating our case line. This house believes that Macbeth would not benefit from the witches not being there, as they provide necessary exposition.
Okay, good, well done, thanks. Round of applause. Remember, I said that the third speaker can introduce new points on this occasion, because we haven't had time. Okay, and the third speaker for the affirmative can go first. Okay, stop talking. Go.
Good morning, audience, we're the adjudicator, fellow opponents and teammates. My name is Asad Chaudhry and I'm the third speaker of the affirmative side of this debate. This house believes that Macbeth, the play, would be better without the witches. Now, I'd like to start with some rebuttals. Now, isn't the play about the internal struggles of man? The internal struggles of a man looking for power. And therefore, with the witches being that external force external force affecting the man as a whole, it deducts from the play. We want to see this power-hungry man come forward and take what's his. We don't want to see some witch coming forward and telling him, please sit down, telling him that you can do this is yours for sure. It's much more evoking if we see a man capable of doing it. Of a man that you trusted so much as your Thane being capable of killing the king. And therefore, as the affirmative side, we see that is far more engaging than seeing witches. Please sit down. And to counter one of the points brought up by Ben, the belief in witches faded out. It faded out very quickly, as a matter of fact. Though it was present at the time Macbeth was first introduced in the world, that belief faded out. And as such, the witches' inclusion in the play should fade out as well. We don't need them anymore. It's much more interesting to see that that it is man that is craved for power. And also the witches bring about an unnatural turn of character. At the beginning, Macbeth is introduced as a powerful and valiant soldier who will kill for the king. And then suddenly, a few acts later, he's changed. He's changed into this madman. And it's very unnatural. It's very sudden. It's not something that you would see happen to a person. If he became a madman over time, naturally, not unnaturally, it would have much more effect on the audience. It links again to my first point, which is that it's more effective to see the everyday man, or in this case the everyday thane, become crazed. And it is in this sense that the witches in the play are not necessary. They're not necessary because the themes of the play are about power, are about struggle. They're not necessary because the idea of the play is about a man looking for power. And that is why the internal struggles should be highlighted, not external forces. Thank you.
Okay, excellent quality. Okay, let's have the final speech, please, for the opposition.
Good morning, honorable adjudicator, fellow opponents, and fellow teammates. So I would like to start by rebutting the third speaker from the opponent team, that you say that the characters should be highlighted with their internal struggles and not their external forces. But you see that the conventions of a tragedy that came up in Greek tragedy are that there are often questions about the characters, from the characters, that is all of this planned? Is it fate? Is it the malice of external forces? Or is it or is it just free will and determinism? Is it our own fault and our own actions that lead us to our demise?
More information.
Yeah.
Would you not consider that it would be so much more interesting if the external forces weren't some trite, wasn't just pandering to royal interest and was Macbeth's closest friends, or someone that Macbeth looks up to? That would be a much more interesting question. What drives a man to kill? What can change him? Why does Macbeth do the things he does? Well, because of some prophecies that change him in an instant, his entire worldview. How does he become changed?
Okay, sure. But the characters need some kind of motive to become crazy, to kill. You can't just be a good man and go crazy for an instant. But the witches present such a prophecy of him becoming king, of him becoming so powerful, that it drives his ambition even further, which leads to him killing Duncan. Also, you said that this engaging of the audience, that it would be more effective for the audience if the plot was built up slowly, the themes of the witches should be built up slowly. But I don't think that is so, because if the witches were not there in the first scene, then we would be confused as an audience. For the first act, is this a tragic play, or is this a comedic play, or is this something about heroism, or yes?
No, too late.
Yeah.
You got 30 seconds.
Okay.
And also, the struggles of psychology do affect the plot. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. Round of applause. Well done. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I have some feedback to give you. Thanks, Lily. Can we just